She's unmuted.
Good morning. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kaya. Thank you, Creative Morning, for having us here. It's very exciting to be in a community of tech nerds and entrepreneurs and spirited people. We are Luftwerk. We shaped our company in 2007, and based on the theme of today, love, we thought, what does love mean? And it's always about seeking to be one. Like you look for somebody, you look for someone to be one with, you look for work that you can identify with. It's always finding connectivity. And I actually really love the quote from Sartre, in love, one and one are one. And I believe we always look for oneness. And we are inspired by people who love what they do. You feel it. Like if a cook loves cooking, you feel it in your whole body, you feel it in your mind. And the same is for the arts. And we are also inspired by people who actually not only love what they do, but they also do it together.
So we're going to go through a few examples of sort of collaborators, artists who have inspired us and sort of gave us a guide or a road to PR.
It's awe-inspiring to see the work of Crystal. He has created monumental art installations throughout the world as a team. And what is very inspiring when we actually read about the Crystals, how dedicated they are to their work. When they install an art installation, unfortunately, the wife had to pass away just a few years ago. They were always flying in separate airplanes to make sure if one airplane would have an accident, the partner can execute the artwork. So they were really, really dedicated and absolutely living for their dream. It's impressive how large of a scale two minds can achieve. And that keeps inspiring and informing our work, how we want to achieve together something that we both come up with.
So this is the latest project that Crystal did without Jean-Claude. And this is in northern Italy, and it's basically connecting this island through this barge system, and it's literally you're walking on water.
The Eames are another inspirational couple.
Who here doesn't own an Eames? So. This is actually the proposal letter from Charles to Ray. And it cracks me up, but it also inspires me. Dear Miss Kaiser. And then 10 years later, this is her response.
So the love never faded. It's inspiring that it keeps refreshing, and I think in our case it's also refreshing that we work together. It keeps love alive.
I mean, that's love. That's trust. I wouldn't do that, but that's serious trust. And you go through the spectrum of emotions when you're collaborative, personally and professionally. So here with Marina Abramovich and Ulay, that's an intense relationship, intense collaboration, intense performance. They live their life, their performance was their life. Even till the end when they finally reunited after many years separated. For that brief moment. And a funny story is that he's suing her for royalties and back payments. So, you know, you have to be business-minded still in that relationship, I guess.
And Gilbert and George are also a fun example of collaborators, and they always find themselves in their work, so you would always see them depicted, or they are the work.
So we come to us, sort of our collaboration, our personal life, our professional life has been mixed.
And we met over 15 years ago at the School of the Art Institute. Being the first time we met, we started collaborating right away. Like, I had a broken record player, and Sean knew how to fix it. So, and it was
so we met over a broken record player.
And, yeah. And it was a record player that I used for performance. So there was always already a DNA of using technology in some way in our work. And it took a while for us to actually launch Luftwerk as a creative studio where both of our ideas can combine. And here's a sample of our very first collaborative projects. I was fairly new to Chicago at that time, and I was fascinated that with 25 cents you can go to a sales slot and get a cube of ice. And I have never seen that before, and I thought, what can you do with this material? It's phenomenal. And we started hanging them in our basement, and were enamored how the material responds to light and how we can encapsulate what that essence of the material is. So we researched, and we're like, oh, clouds are particles of ice, and when it rains, those particles are actually melting. So that was kind of the foundation for an idea that was in our basement. So and it magically, we had an opportunity. We wanted to show this in a gallery. No gallery space really wanted the work. It was too risky, too messy, too short term for them. And we brought it into an alternative space where one person saw it, and this one person enabled a life-changing moment for us. It became an experience of lifting 9 tons of ice with projections, video projections on all these ice blocks. And underneath we had a pond where the water would be captured, and we had metal discs where the water drops would hit and trigger tones. So it was truly an audiovisual experience.
So this small concept of these 30-pound ice blocks became this larger sort of project with these 9 tons? 9 tons.
9 tons.
9 tons of ice. And this was about this was like
Long time ago.
13 years ago. So whatever you start in your basement can really be, the inception of something larger. And so just from that experimentation, that play with material and light, we sort of created this DNA of sort of experimenting and then creating large-scale installations.
And then many years later, also after living in Chicago for so long, we became enamored by architecture. And our first experience with architecture was actually through the Roby House in Hyde Park, which then enabled a wild dream of ours. How can we engage with Frank Lloyd Wright and with one of his boldest buildings? And we were approached by the Western Pennsylvania Conservatory to celebrate with them the 75th anniversary of the iconic building. And at that point in our career, we have not been involved in video mapping. So we really kind of, yes, we take on the opportunity and let's learn it. So it was a very bold adventure for us, especially given the site. We worked off of blueprints. Of course, our studio is in Chicago. You cannot just bring a projector and try things out. It was all based on working with the model. And when we came to the site, some trees were leaning, and it was different than our blueprint. And it was exciting.
We're up in the trees. We're up in the trees about 20 most exhilarating challenge to map this building. And we mapped it 3/4 of the way, and we used footage from the site and sort of had this architecture meets nature theme flow through the video. So on the other end of that spectrum, the Frank Lloyd spectrum, we approached Farnsworth House out in Plano, New York. And this was Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water was the heartstring, was art and nature, organic architecture, and this was sort of really wrapping your head around East Van Ro's architecture philosophy of less is more, trying to just find some foothold in this minimalist approach of architecture.
And it was also really interesting for us how the two different buildings relate to nature and to site. They're both very, very site-specific and nestled in nature, but the feeling you get from them is so different. With Falling Water, we were absolutely enamored. We were in love with the building, and with Farnsworth, we were more in awe than in love. It was always kind of a huge challenge to kind of work with that icon. It was also a project that we funded through Kickstarter, and it had it's actually a project we initiated. So it was a long way to actually illuminate the structure. It was like 2 years in the works of getting the permit through the National Trust of Historic Preservation to engage with that museum. But it's been a great lesson for us, and we would do it again. And we also love color and public space.
So this is a project we did in Millennium Park called Luminous Field, and it's right in front of Cloudgate, Anish Kapoor's Cloudgate, and we really used that reflection to our advantage to create this sort of playground of color and light. And we love kids because they get it immediately. They get where light is, where it's from. They play with it. We're sort of inhibited by being out in public and being in the art, but kids, they run with complete no limits. So we love, that's our target audience when it comes to light and public art. You've got a kid running through it and a really big smile and they love it, you've succeeded. This is underneath the beam, and it's creating these trippy colors, and it just works underneath there. And projecting light was challenging in this type of weather. So this was in January.
In winter.
So when we actually opened up in a snowstorm. So if you're going to do work on, this is our wheelhouse. This is the time of year where light is less abundant, and you can work at night, and video and lighting comes through. So we do freeze our asses off out there, but we do it all for the love of our art.
And one thing about Luminous Field again, it was very fun to see so many people come out. Usually when you present artwork or you share artwork, you're happy if people show up. So and with Luminous Field, it was the opposite. It was like the video projections were kind of the rock star of Millennium Park for 10 nights, and people just came out and played and immersed with light and color. And it was really kind of fun to see how art enlivens public space.
Yeah, at some point you no longer saw the video. It was on everybody, and people were kind of wondering where the video projected on, and you were the screen, you were the artwork. And I think that's something about public art, is that at some point we let it live, let it go wild in the public, and you own it, and you get to play with it. You create different narrative, you evolve it, and I think that's...
People create their own stories with the work. It's very fun.
So continuing with this color theme, this is a show we did at the Cultural Center, and it's called Shift. And
we were really interested in color theory. We love color, so we wanted to kind of explore more, like what are the theories and principles behind color, and looked a lot at like Itten, he developed the color wheel, the color chart that all graphic designers and artists are kind of referencing to. And we wanted to have an experience of painting these colors and creating a wall that interacts with color and light. So it was the shift and ebb of like, how does color and light interact, and how, if I have a red color, how does it interact with a red light, and it becomes intensified. So it's all about the shift and ebb of color responding to light. And how do I use light to create colorful shadows?
So this was unexpected. This was the most interactive part of the room. We had 3 rooms at the Cultural Center, and this was the most used, the most sort of playful room. And we thought this would be sort of a meditative room, but people just got really excited when they saw their shadows in different colors. And you know, it's a very simple principle, projecting 3 different colors, and your shadows take on the opposite color, basically. And it's, you know, it's our perception of how our shadow and the color sort of live. So in the 3rd room, we played with perception and sort of opening up another portal that continued through the room.
And we currently still have an exhibition that is open until September. It opened last September. I don't know who has seen it already, and if not, please go and check it out. It's at the Garfield Park Conservatory, and the conservatory has always been one of our favorite sites in the city since we live here. And it was extremely exciting when in 2012, the director of the conservatory approached us if we want to be part of their grand reopening after them having a hailstorm damage. So as of last year, the conservatory is completely rehabbed and recovered from the hailstorm, and we were part of their reopening story. And we really, over the course of 2 years, we were really engaging with the history of the site, the story of the site, and how we can create a meaningful interaction with that structure and go through the different spaces. And Jens Jensen is the designer of the conservatory, and his idea was the Prairie Landscape, and he referred to the prairie as a sea of all colors, which was an easy reference for us to jump right into. And the building mimics a haystack. At that time, when it was built in 1907, most conservatories were mimicking palaces, but this was really a bold structure, long, wide, horizontal. So it was really a haystack, mimicking a haystack, and we thought that's kind of interesting and very Midwestern. And we filmed the prairie grass in their city, in the garden, in the conservatory, and are illuminating through LED, dynamic LED lighting, the prairie grasses.
So every night you see this sort of lighting and video play on the facade here, and it's actually informed by wind speed. So we call data from O'Hare Airport, and depending on the wind speed, it plays the video faster or slower. So we really wanted to play with this idea of grass blowing in the wind. So I don't know if you can see it, but way back from that sculpture, there's the fern room, and within the fern room, there's a waterfall, and it's the famous Jens Jensen waterfall. And so this sculpture called Portal is framing that waterfall, but at the same time reflecting its surrounding, and it's in the reflection pond in the pond house here. So this was actually our first proposal for the conservatory after their hailstorm. We wanted to create something that paid homage to Jens Jensen and the waterfall, and they came back to us and said, think bigger, take over the place. So we researched and we spent, this is one of the places in Chicago that we love, that, if you haven't been there, go there on a cold winter's day and you'll feel like you're in the tropics. So each room changes environmentally, and, different climates and different species, and we consider this a museum because it houses all these different specimens and different sort of plant life, so it's truly an amazing place.
And this piece is titled Fluorescence. And right now is actually a great time to see it because the sun is high in the sky and it casts colorful shadows on the floor. The red and blue comes out of our question. We love color and we love seeing color. What do plants see? How do plants perceive? And they perceive the red and blue spectrum out of the light. So we thought, okay, perfect. We're gonna use red and blue and create an immersive red and blue environment, an environment for plant vision. And so and we used a simple pattern, an optical pattern, to kind of create this canopy that floats above. And during the summer can cast these colorful shadows and immerse the public with those colors of plant perception. And in the evening times, we color light the entire show house with color-changing LEDs. And what we really liked was how when we illuminate colorful flowers with color-changing light, they change how we see it. They absorb it and they reflect the light differently. And so you can find yourself, if you go there with a little bit of time in the evening hours, you can find yourself a little bit in a wonderland of color-changing flowers and plants. And there was actually it was a fun experience to do this color-changing experiment with the horticulture team at the Conservatory. We went there with a single color-changing light bulb and walked through the whole conservatory observing different plant life. And it was really phenomenal to find so much enthusiasm in the horticulture team to work with us and collaborate very, very, very closely.
They were great collaborators and partners with us for this project. This is a piece called Seed of Light, and it's trays of water, and there's a drop that drops programmed with the light. It creates this ripple effect on the ground, and it's a seed of life pattern. This is in the desert house, and we're playing with fractals and the cross-cut section of cacti and sort of creating geometric sculpture out of it. And these are prismatic, acrylic prismatic rods, and so during the day you'll have some glints of color, and at night we spot them so that it's really a colorful environment at night.
And we just come back from something very different. We've worked with the Bavarian State Opera on an opera. So it was a new commission piece, and it performed just a little under 2 weeks ago for only 4 nights. And we were challenged to design a stage that also worked for video. So it was kind of interesting to kind of, yes, we are designing a space that is actually made for projection. So it became almost this virtual world that ever shifts for singers to perform in.
And the opera was based on Penthesilea and Achilles, and it was a love story, but it was a very tragic love story. So we kept the scene and the video sort of abstract so that it didn't fight with the realism of the costume or the singers. In the end, Penthesilea kills Achilles, basically. So that's
And then she
also
kills
a love
herself.
story,
Yeah.
but a very violent love story. And this is something we did on Marina Tower, not too long ago. And it's sort of our fascination with architecture and sort of how do you change the perspective of a given site, of a given built environment. And we just like working with that context of history, narrative, and the site, and bringing in a new media, light, projection, and sort of creating a new perspective. Thanks.
Thank you.